After a resounding election victory, President-elect Donald Trump and Republicans say they have a mandate to govern. But it's opening an uneasy political question. Will there be any room for dissent in the U.S. Congress? Before he even takes office, Trump is challenging the Senate to dare defy him over the controversial nominations of Matt Gaetz and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Debate over the next Attorney General of the United States continues on Capitol Hill today.
I'm not talking to anybody about what I've said to Trump. The Speaker has no involvement or understanding of what's going on with the Ethics Committee or what they're investigating or when.
The drama centers around the nomination of former Florida House Rep Matt Gaetz as Attorney General and how his resignation from the House this week halted an investigation into alleged sexual misconduct, illicit drug use, and other improper behavior. Gaetz has denied any wrongdoing. Many senators and House reps across the aisle demanding the House Ethics Committee release the results before Gaetz takes over the top law enforcement job in the country.
The Senate ought to have all the information it needs to make a decision. I personally am deeply disappointed that the president-elect would think that an individual with the background of the nominee would be nominated by the president.
Including members of the Ethics Committee itself.
I think it's essential for them to get that kind of information before they make a decision of this magnitude.
But not the Speaker of the House, who says he will strongly request the investigation to remain sealed.
Of not issuing ethics on people who are no longer members of Congress. I think it would open a Pandora's box. I think it's a very important rule that should be maintained. If it's been broken once or twice, it should not have been, because that would be a Pandora's box. I think it's a very important tradition to maintain.
Gaetz's new role will need to be approved by the Senate, which won a slim Republican majority this election. And he's not the only controversial pick from the president-elect. Trump has so far announced 11 nominations of the possible 24 positions that will require approval. Here are some of the high-profile appointments we know so far. Of course, Florida Representative Matt Gaetz has been tapped for Attorney General, head of the Department of Justice. Florida Senator Marco Rubio will become the Secretary of State in charge of Foreign Affairs. Fox News host Pete Hegseth will take defense. South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem as Homeland Security. Former House Rep Tulsi Gabbard will lead the Department of National Intelligence, while Robert F. Kennedy Jr. will head up health, among others. Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy's new roles in the Department of Government Efficiency won't require approval, as it is a new department.
We want you to come up with things and ideas and what you've been talking about for a long time, and I think you're going to do some unbelievable thing. Nobody's going to be able to do it like you.
The person who Trump says is going to do unbelievable things? RFK Jr., who has been tapped to lead the Department of Health and Human Services. Experts and lawmakers expressing their concerns as Kennedy has become one of the nation's most prominent anti-vaccine conspiracy theorists.
So anybody who wants to take a vaccine, I'm not going to get in their way. But I am going to tell the truth to Americans, and I'm going to do it for the first time.
Having someone like that at the top of our entire national health infrastructure, I think it's going to harm people. It's going to really harm the health of the American people.
Kennedy is already promising major overhaul in his department. To help us break down some of Trump's picks for his cabinet, we're joined now by Stephen Farnsworth, professor at the University of Mary Washington. Thanks for joining us, Stephen.
Glad to be here.
There's almost too many nominees named this week to keep track of. He's chosen almost all his loyalists as his inner circle. What does this tell us about his second term?
Well, I think it's important to recognize that the second Donald Trump term will be much more without guardrails than the first term. The selections for the cabinet so far, for top aides so far, demonstrate that Donald Trump prizes loyalty above everything else. The difficulties that he had in convincing the Secretary of State or the Attorney General to do what Trump wanted in his first term because of the independence that they sometimes offered will not be repeated. You're looking at a very, very loyal group of people that Trump has appointed so far.
In your opinion, which nomination is the most notable?
Well, I think the most notable choice so far is the congressman from Florida, Matt Gaetz, who's been named Attorney General. He will be subject to a confirmation hearing And that will be a particularly contentious one, I think. This is somebody who hasn't been a prosecutor. He hasn't worked in the Justice Department. He doesn't have much experience in this area. What he does have, though, is loyalty to President Trump. And that is apparently the key factor here. The congressman resigned this week in order to avoid the release of a very, very damning study, we understand, that speaks about the congressman's behavior with teenagers and sexual misconduct involving the congressman's behavior. This is going to be a very difficult set of allegations for the congressman to sustain. My guess is, given the volume of leaking that occurs in Washington, the public will learn about this review by the House Ethics Committee sooner rather than later.
Trump has created a new government department, the Department of Government Efficiency, and tasked two of his very wealthy supporters to run it. Do you see Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy being effective in finding efficiencies?
Well, it's an odd choice that you decide to create efficiency and then you put two people in charge of what one person could be in charge of. But be that as it may, the reality is that the vast majority of government spending is really kind of locked in. There's payment on the debt. That doesn't change. The president-elect has said that he will not adjust Social Security or Medicare. That's not going to change then. You add to that the defense industry. You're talking about the president-elect wanting to increase defense spending. And when you add all that stuff up, you're well over half of the budget. And so the idea that you're going to cut 30% of government spending from the 40% that's not in the things I just mentioned, that's going to be pretty tough to do. Every time government watchdogs or government officials talk about trying to shrink the size of the government in any substantial way, they walk away without doing that. There are too many sacred cows in Washington. You'll see people stand up for their subsidies in red states. You'll see them stand up for their subsidies in blue states. You'll see them stand up for programs they care about. It's very, very hard to have big change in Washington, regardless of who's in power.
We're still waiting on several more appointments. What are you watching for in the coming days?
Well, I think one of the big questions is this just a matter of these particular appointments or a larger pattern that Trump has of really limiting the number of people who are expert and experienced in the areas where they're going to be put into place. Some of the appointments are actually pretty strong ones. I think of Senator Marco Rubio as a Secretary of State. This is somebody who's focused a lot on international issues in the Senate. This is the kind of person who would have been appointed as a presidential cabinet member in previous presidents. These are people like Rubio. But the Rubios are in short supply in the names we've seen so far, where the ability to be a talking head on Fox News seems more important than actually running an agency.
That's all the time we have today. Thanks for joining us, Stephen.
Thank you.